This presentation is about my dissertation project, Proto, which is a platform for managing coding problems and submissions. So handwritten code is really hard to write and read, and it's even harder to grade, but it's a really important process that's used in a lot of different areas. There's this great paper which explores how it's currently done and the existing uses, such as in education, recruitment, and competitive programming. So there are existing solutions, but they can be difficult to customize for each particular use case. And what this project aims to do is to sort of extract these common use cases and develop a comprehensive, modular, and extensible platform which could then be implemented into various different new applications. And so the end result of this implementation is Proto, which is a full-stack web application for creating, solving, and automatically assessing programming problems and submissions. The context it's sort of created within is for education and like a university. So it includes features for being able to build classrooms, invite students, set assignments, and then give feedback, both for existing problems and also for teachers giving feedbacks to students' assignment submissions. So developers can then utilize the modular backend in various different contexts, such as university assignments, coding challenges, hackathons, and employability examinations, because the features are very similar for all of these. So in this demonstration, the scenario we're going to be dealing with is that we're going to act as a student who's also a teaching assistant. That means that they're in multiple classes where their teachers are giving them assignments, but they also teach multiple classes every week where, as a TA, they have to set assignments and mark them. And so this demonstration will show different features such as logging in, creating problems, solving existing ones, joining and creating a classroom, completing and setting assignments, marking submissions, and viewing profile pages. So this is the homepage for the application, and what we'll do is we'll click on login, then click on login with GitHub. We can then enter our login details and just sign in. And now that I've logged in with GitHub and authorized the app, it then redirects me back to the homepage. What I can do here is then go on the dashboard, and here I can see all the existing problems on a nice table, and I can also see that I have no assignments. What I can do is I can create a new problem, and here I have to name the problem, assign it a difficulty. I can then write some markdown for a description, and I can also preview that markdown. I can then add test cases, and I can make some of them hidden. This is to prevent cheating, so hidden test cases, the users can't see what the input is or what the expected output is. And finally, I can also add the languages that I want to support. So we've got Python, Java, and JavaScript. And for each language that we're supporting, it also provides some starter code. And what this does is does simple things like reading from the console for taking all the different test case inputs and things like that. So you have to adjust this for the problem. Alternatively, you could just leave it empty, but right now we provide by default some code that the person could edit. So I'm going to now fill this up with a new FizzBuzz problem, and we'll be back. So I've given the problem a name, I've set the difficulty for it, I've added a nice description with some examples. I've also included my test cases. So I've got these 3 test cases the user can see, and I've got this hidden test case for the input 45, and the user won't be able to see this test case. And then I've also set some like starter code. So we now click on create problem, and this will create the problem for us and redirect us to the page. Here, when we're looking at a problem, we can give it a rating, and we can see the existing ratings. We can select the language, so let's do it in Python. We can see the test cases, and again, the hidden test case doesn't show us any information. We can then write our code for this problem. If right now with this incorrect submission, we click on run all test cases, we'll fail the test cases, and we can see what our output was. We can also add our own custom test cases if we want to do some testing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this problem, and we can look at that. So I've now implemented a solution. If we now click on run all tests, you'll see that we get ticks because we've passed all the test cases, including the hidden test case. If I'm happy with this submission, I can then just click on submit. I've now submitted the code. I could do another submission. If my code was incorrect, for example, and I click submit, it would then show that I didn't pass the test cases. Here you can then also view any particular submission by clicking on view, and so I can see how I performed on each test case, and I can see the code that I wrote. There's also a leaderboard here which shows the best performing submissions for this problem. So currently that's me with these 2, and they're already sorted by the average time. If we now go to view classrooms, because we're a student currently, we can't see we're not in any classroom, so we don't see any classrooms. But imagine we were given a link by a teacher to join a classroom. So we'll go to that. So we've got this invite link. We click on join classroom, and now we're part of this classroom. If we go back to the list, we can see it here. We can see that there's 2 assignments, so let's go view one of these assignments. It's got 3 problems, and I can go to any of those problems. And if I look at my submissions, I can see I haven't made a submission for any of them. If we now go to the addition problem, I can see it here. Maybe I want to make a submission in Python. So I've made a Python submission. I can do a Java submission. Maybe one of my submissions has an error or something, and whatever. So if we go back to the assignment now, we can see that we've made 3 different submissions, and I can choose which submission I want the teacher to mark for this problem. So let's say I look at this and I'm like, you know what, I like the Python code. Let's set that as my submission. I don't want to submit this Java one because it's failed. And then I can do that for the rest of the problems. And then I can also view which submissions I've made for each problem here, and I can remove them and change them however I want. Now what we'll do is go back to viewing the classrooms, but we will change into teacher mode. So now I've turned on teacher mode and I can see the classrooms which I as a teacher have created. So we can just view one of these classrooms here, and I can see that I have 1 student, and I can I can see the assignments that I've set as well. So if I open up one of these assignments, I can see that it only has 1 problem. And if I go to the submissions, I can see a graph which shows the how students have performed on this, the average marks and whatnot. I can see that 1 student, I can see their organization ID. I can see that they've attempted one of the problems, but they haven't solved any, and they currently have a submission mark of 0. And I can see when they made their last change to their submission. I can also export a CSV of all of this data, which could then be imported to Moodle or used for other purposes. So if I click that, I will just download a CSV. And then let's say I wanted to view this particular submission. I can see it here, I can see the code. In this example, it's just one that I've pre-populated from the data into the database. So I can give them a mark, let's say 50, and I say maybe write more code. And then I can update the feedback. I can then close this, and you can see that the graphs have updated and their mark here is updated as well. If we return to the classrooms page, we can just click on the create classrooms button. You can see we just give it a name, and then we have an optional password as well. So to set an assignment, what we can do is view a classroom and then click on set assignment. We can then give it a name like final homework. We can then give a problem to the select the problems that we want for this assignment, like addition and subtraction. We can then set the due date, so we'll set that for the future, and we can click submit. And of course, there's validation going on in the back end. We can see the problems that we set, and we can see that there's no submissions yet. So that's it for the demonstration. Here are some screenshots of the automated tests written for this application. These were incorporated into the CI/CD in GitHub using GitHub Actions, and this makes it so that if code changes are made and then pushed to GitHub, it's easy to see if those changes have caused any problems, and it makes development a lot easier. It's worth mentioning that the project is released under the MIT license, meaning the code can be modified, distributed, and commercialized under different terms, but it comes with no liabilities or warranties. And this works really well for the intended aims of this project. It was really interesting to think about designing the system and how different components would work together, particularly coming up with a database schema that would then be applicable to all of the different scenarios. Once the foundation of the system was set up, it was really a great experience developing and implementing the user stories. So, often what I would do is I would define the backend logic required for a feature and then design the front end and link them together. And I really enjoyed designing the front end too. Overall, the project was successful. It implemented all the intended features and implemented some things that were beyond the initial scope as well. There are a few areas of future work, so I've listed some of them here, and since the project is open source and built to be maintainable and extensible, I think that these things could be quite easily implemented too. Here are some of the features that I think would be the most important. So the project currently supports Python 3.8, Python 2.7, Java, and JavaScript because they're quite popular languages. But the code execution system used doesn't have libraries installed for these languages, which means that if we want to add languages or particular libraries for a language, we might have to set up our own environment to be able to do that, and the documentation isn't very clear for that. So basically, for example, with Python, it doesn't have NumPy installed by default. Most exciting for me out of these features would be the additional question types and the plagiarism checking. And I think that's just because it's an area which a lot of platforms could utilize quite well. And so that's it for the demonstration. I hope you enjoyed that. Here's my email at the top if you have any questions.